Welcome to the Integrate This EdTech podcast, your essential podcast for educators and tech enthusiasts. My name is Jeremy Mikla. I'm joined by David Berner, your guides to the intersection of technology and education. As we explore the latest EdTech tips, tools, and trends, join us in a dynamic, tech-forward classroom creation event. Are you ready for today's digital learning adventure? Then let's dive in. David, please let our viewers know what we have on tap for today.
Yeah, so today we are going to showcase part 2 of MagicSchool 3.0, and we are going to cover unpacking standards, creating lesson plans, and unit plans for elementary and secondary classrooms.
Awesome. You know, I did one of these presentations for a group of teachers a week ago, and it was, of course, on MagicSchool here, and I thought it would be really kind of cool to kind of tie in the MagicSchool part with like something like Hogwarts and Harry Potter world and stuff. So I went and explored in my son's room because we had been to Universal Studios a few years ago, and he had gone to that wand shop and had bought his magic wand and brought it home. And I thought for sure, you know, and my son he's a junior in college. Okay. So I thought I could go into his room while he's away at college and find his wand. And I'm searching around, and I call him up and say, Aiden, I can't find your wand. You know, remember when we were at Hogwarts and all that? And he's like, well, yeah, it's in my dorm room. I thought, okay, kid, you know, what kind of a person raises a kid that brings his magic wand to college with him? And so, you
Great
know,
one.
I had to give him a little bit of credit. What's that?
A great one, in my opinion.
A great one, yeah, thanks. That's the right answer. So I can just see him there. He's probably casting all sorts of spells to try to get better grades and things like that. So
Yeah. Well, with AI now, you can use your wand, or you can use just the AI systems that are
hey,
available. So either way, you get it done.
I like your smooth transition there, right? Into using the AI powered tools of MagicSchool, which is really what we're here for today. And so our plan, as David laid out, is to show you from both an elementary and a secondary perspective. And David's going to take the start here and lead us through the MagicSchool lesson planning steps that a teacher could take at the elementary level. So David, take it away.
All right. So as Jeremy said, I'm going to take a look at some standards and lesson plans and unit plans, and it's going to be specifically geared towards elementary level content. And so we're going to take a look at 3rd grade, and we're going to focus on social studies. And so within the Magic tools, if you watched the previous video, our part 1, you would have seen that there's a dashboard here with a lot of different options for you. So a lot of different cards that you can select. What I've done is, as you favorite these, you'll see that you have your favorites at the top. We're going to actually focus on the standards unpacker, and then we're going to move into the lesson plan, and finally we'll wrap up with the unit plan generator. And they're all going to be centered around 3rd grade social studies. I've already selected a standard. I've already pulled that out. We'll see that here in a second. But this is going to be a couple of the more heavily used options that are within the dashboard. So if I just go over, I'm going to go over to this next tab to our standards unpacker, and we're going to select, so our grade level is at the top. You have this drop down where you can select what grade level are you focused on, and then you can put in the standard here. One thing to point out, as you work with this system and you try out the standards unpacker and the lesson plans and the unit plan generator, one thing to just be aware of is the more information that you can give it, the better. So if when you're pulling in a standard, being explicit about the fact that it's a Minnesota state standard, it's for this particular grade, it's for this particular standard or benchmark, all of that is just helpful information that you can put in so that the system works in a way that you would like it to. There's been times where I've been kind of vague with what I've put in, and what that sometimes will result in is pulling standards that aren't exactly aligned to what I'm looking for. So just a really important thing to point out, if you're not getting what you're looking for when you've asked it to generate a lesson for you, or one of these other options, just go back and take a look at the text that you've put in, the information that you've given it, and make sure that you've given it enough information to go off of. And you can always, have follow-up conversation with it too, to input more information as you go. So this standard unpacker, the thing that is really nice about this is particularly, and anybody could use this as a teacher, but I think about a lot of times when you have someone who is a new teacher and they're looking at all these standards for their content area and trying to map out, how do I help my students meet these standards? MagicSchool with this standards unpacker is a really great way to input a standard and then have it generate what does that look like, so that as the teacher you can explore how you should approach teaching the students about this particular standard. So in this case, I just put in 3rd grade. I did indicate that it's the Minnesota State Social Studies standard for 3rd grade. What I will add actually is, because of the way social studies, the standards are laid out, you're going to have several different areas within social studies, so you'll have your government, economics, US history, world history, etc. This particular standard is about world history. So I'm just going to add that in there so that it is a little bit more clear as it's generating. And then what I did was I took this standard. So this is standard 7 from world history. And, one thing too, you could add the code in there as well, which may be helpful. We can try that for ours. We have 3.4.3.7. So let me just put in, make sure I got the right one here. 3.7. Okay. And then I put in the text of the standard. And this one's about domestication and agriculture. So I'm going to go ahead and click generate. And it's going to lay out how it's going to break that down. Okay. And we'll let it kind of do its thing here. And then we'll go back up to the top. And then as a teacher, I can then look at this and go, okay, what are the key components here? What are the things that we need to be focused on? What it did from that text that we got is that it pulled out the specifics. So it pulled out these 3 areas: the emergence of domestication, facilitation of the development of complex societies, and far-reaching social and cultural effects. Okay. Then it goes into defined expectations. Okay. What should the students be able to do? What should they learn from this? And then formulating learning targets. Covers a couple areas: knowledge, skills, and concepts. So you can see here that what's nice is the ability to take in the standard and put that in terms of what is the learning target. So if if you're someone who puts that on their board as you're going over this unit, this is taking and it's giving you the learning targets that relate to that standard. And so you can take that information and put that into your unit and make sure that it's visible for your students to see what are the things we're working on, what are we trying to accomplish with this, what are we trying to learn, right? If you go down a little further, you have instruction and assessment strategies. So as the educator, it's going to give you options for how do we know that the students have achieved understanding in these learning targets, right? So we started with our standard. It breaks down the standard. It gives you learning targets, and then it gives you tips and suggestions for how to meet those learning targets with specific assessment strategies. So then the teacher can look at this and go, okay, well, I hadn't really thought about how I was going to assess the students. And I like this idea a lot. Use artifacts and visual aids to illustrate the transition from hunter-gatherer societies to agricultural communities, right? And looking back at our standard here, that emergence of domestication, agriculture, facilitated by the development of complex societies and caused far-reaching social and cultural effects. Okay, so it is meeting that standard. It's taking all those different, or taking the standard and giving me all the different elements that I need to be able to teach this effectively. And so this is one that you can play around with a lot. You can throw in different standards that you have. I know everybody's content area is going to be different. Or if you're an elementary teacher and you're focused on social studies for the time being, that you could put that in there, and then you can try out what does it generate for me as ideas for the breakdown of this standard. Okay, and social studies and third grade is just the example I'm using. You can certainly put in any other grade. You can put in any other content area, and it's going to have that same effect. Okay. And you can always chat with Raina down here more. It will fill in some cards that you can click. Like this one is, these two here are in reference to the assessment strategies. So it says, what are some examples of visual aids that can be used? So if I'm not real sure about that, I could click on that. Maybe it's going to come up with posters or things like that, or like a Google Slides presentation, things like that. So we have posters on there, timeline poster, and some other visual aid examples, right? So, it's not that you're just, when you get your standard breakdown and you have it, the initial response, you're not just limited to that. You can continue to have a conversation and get more and more ideas, get more and more deeper into how you're going to address this standard. And I think it's a really great guide. And particularly, again, for teachers that are just getting started, maybe haven't had a ton of classroom experience, and this is going to be something that takes a lot off their plate, gives them more time, gives them more information, and I would say too, helps them feel more confident about implementing the standard and assessment, and checking to see if their students have met that standard. Okay, so once we have that, right, we can also look at the lesson plan and unit plan generators. So for the lesson plan here, I did the same thing. I have the same exact text already inputted into here. I do need to change my grade level because we know that it's third grade. In the standards unpacker, I did put in the standards, so I'll do that again. So we have 3.4.3.7. Again, the idea here is to give it as much information as possible so that you're not getting information that you don't want or that is incorrect to what you're trying to accomplish. So that's our topic standard, right? You can put in an objective. If you've already got one, you can put that in there. And then down below, you have the additional criteria. So I put in, students are just starting the year and learning about this concept. You could put in if students have background or on this already, or if what kind of unit they're in, what kind of lesson that, their last lesson was, any context that helps with that. Mine was really generic. You could just, whatever fits the best, you can put in there. But we'll go ahead and hit generate, and it's going to start to spit out a lesson plan here. And we're going to take a look at this once we've got it all laid out. You can see too, I mean, it's really quick. Okay, so up at the top, we've got our lesson title. We have our objective. Okay, and that's going to be very similar to what we did with the standards unpacker because we're using that same standard. Assessment, key points, and then, so these things were in the objective and assessment and key points were in the standards unpacker. But when you're working with the lesson plan generator or the unit lesson plan or the unit plan is the pacing that's available to you. So it kind of walks you through, like, what does this look like in real time, right? And so you have your opening, introduction to new material, you have some guided practice time, independent practice, and then closing. Okay, suggested differentiation for certain students that might need that, extension activity for students that finish early, and then you have some homework options as well. Okay, you do still have your cards down here if you want to take it a step further. So as what are some examples of early civilizations impacted by agriculture? And these will end up different each time. What I do want to know is, we'll try this in real time here. We'll say, can you give me the breakdown of time for the pacing section? So we'll try that out right there. Okay, so here's a breakdown of the suggested time for each section of the lesson. So when we looked at our opening here, they estimate 10 minutes. right? And then introduction to new material, 15 minutes, guided practice, 10 minutes, independent practice, 15 minutes, and closing 5 minutes. So then it tells you this adds up to a total of 55 minutes. However, one thing that we could try is we could say, what if my class is only 45 minutes? How can we adjust? Okay, we'll try that and then we'll see what it does here. Okay, opening 8 minutes, introduction 12, guided 8, independent practice 10, and closing 5. And then it says this adds up to a total of 43 minutes. And then this is kind of funny, leaves a little bit of buffer time for transition. So it even accounts for, your typical classroom where it doesn't always go, or flow exactly how you'd like it to. So it's kind of interesting that it would, recognize that and then put in and account for some of that. Okay, so you can try this with anything, any lessons that you want to try out. And then, this is a standalone lesson. So let's say we want to take that a step further and we're going to look at our unit plan generator. Okay, again, I've got things in here already. So my grade level, I do need to change, 3rd grade. The length of unit, I can change as well. The default is the very first option, so 5 school days. However, if you know something that it's going to take maybe 2 weeks, so you could put 10 school days in there or adjust it for however you want, however long you think that the unit should last based on your curriculum map pacing that you have for, and everyone's time is going to vary too. You may have, a semester class or a year-long class. So all that's going to play a factor and you can adjust for that. Here, we're going to put in our standard again, 3.4.3.7. Okay, and then they have the text in there. You can add context. You can put standards set to align to. I just did Minnesota Social Studies. Maybe I want to put the year in. This is from the 2011 standards that were submitted and approved. Once I've got the information in, I can click generate, and then it's going to act in very much the same way as everything else, right? So it's going to spit out the entire text for us, and what we're going to have is our breakdown of the 5-day unit. So for each day, it's going to give us an objective, assessment, and key points, but they're all going to center around meeting the 3.4.3.7 standard. And you can see that in the standard addressed section here. Okay. One thing I do like is that, and this will vary, but you'll have activity suggestions, but just underneath that, you have the standards addressed. Now, in this case, it basically just is going to meet 3.4.3.7, but in other instances that we've done this, I've seen where it will actually pull in another standard too from the state standards that you've asked it to. If it recognizes that there's another standard that what we're doing as our unit and our objectives is going to meet both this standard and another one that maybe we didn't account for. So it didn't show it here, but sometimes it will pull in other standards if it matches when appropriate. So from here, you could always take this information and you could go back to your lesson plan now, your lesson plan generator, and you could put in that information to be able to meet day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on, right? So if you have your entire unit laid out, use this information to go back to the lesson plan generator and start that process so that you can see what that looks like. So if we put in, we'll see if we can copy this in here. And I think I'm just going to take this and we're going to try this. We're just going to input that in and hit generate, and then we're just going to see what we've got here. Okay, but the idea is basically to, if you're looking for an entire unit and you're starting from scratch, you have no idea where to start with the unit plan generator, get your objectives and your assessment and all those type of things. Take that information, plug it into your lesson plan generator, and then get those lessons so that you have a breakdown for each day for the entire unit. And that is going to be our elementary version of MagicSchool for standards unpacker, lesson plan, and unit plan generator. Now, Jeremy is going to cover what that looks like from the secondary level for science.
Awesome. Thanks for that, David. All right, so for this next segment of the episode here, we're going to take a look at using the different tools within MagicSchool to help you set up a lesson for a high school science, probably like a 10th grade life science or biology class. And so you can see here as I'm starting out with Magic Tools, I'm going to use Magic Tools to help me develop a lesson plan. And I'm going to choose this time something a little bit different. I'm going to try to develop a 5E model lesson plan, one that focuses on engaging, exploring, explaining, elaborating, and evaluating. So I'm going to open up that particular tool. And just like David was showing you with the grade level and the topic and the standard parts, that's where we're going to begin here also. And I'm just going to change the default to 10th grade for this particular lesson. So I have a standard in mind that I pulled from the Minnesota State Science Standards. And I'm just going to copy that lesson to place it into this box here. We're going to deal with the topic of evolution. And I'm going to paste a standard that comes from there. And I'm going to tell it that I want something additional. I definitely want to include some sort of practice that's going to maybe involve a little bit of some hands-on activity, and is also going to ask for a reflection assessment. Okay. And let's ask it to generate and see what it comes up with. So here it is generating this lesson plan that should take about 1 class hour to do because that's what it should default to. And it's going to break down this lesson plan into those 5 different areas, right? Starting with engaging. And it says, maybe we should start with some sort of a brainstorming activity that can help them deal with some of these different concepts that are going to be addressed in the lesson. Then it moves on to the exploring part, right? And you're going to explore some things through a simulation. You're going to watch a video and look to identify some evidence that comes out from that video. Then it moves into some explanation parts and a chance for people to be able to elaborate based upon a case study and upon an interactive simulation. Then it gives you in the evaluate part, the reflection assessment here. And so it's actually going to take some of those things that you would have learned and had an opportunity to practice within the lesson, and then lead a discussion with your class. It gives extension stuff and comes up with conclusion. And so this might be great. And if this is great, if this is the best lesson that I can possibly produce, one of the things that I'm going to be able to do, you'll see that hovers over in the right-hand side of the screen. I could choose to copy this lesson as it is, and now it tells me that it's ready to paste. I could go to my Google Doc that I have open, and I can place that part right here onto my document, and it's going to put that whole lesson on my Google Doc. Now, what's the reason why I might want to do this? Maybe I want to have the ability to be able to edit certain parts and certain things within the lesson that I wanted to be able to, like when I'm presenting things, I have certain things that I might highlight, or I know certain things that are going to be on the end of the unit test or assessment, and maybe I'm going to want to emphasize them. And by putting it into Google Docs, I'm able to do all of those different things. So that's one kind of neat thing here that you're able to do with this as well. So I'm going to go back here to some other tools here that maybe I would use in my lesson or unit on evolution. And one of the things with science that is really neat that they also have is the ability to use a science lab generator. So I'm going to open this one up here this time, and I want to create some sort of a lab activity that I'm going to have my students do. Verify once again that it says 10th grade. Okay, and I want to do a lab on evolution. And now I know David talked about, so, being just very general and sometimes getting maybe not as good of a response if you just leave it kind of vague and general. The better, more specific you can drill it down to what exactly you're trying to do, the better results that you're going to be able to get when it starts to generate the response for you. But I'm just going to leave it vague here for right now. I'm going to, in this context here, students should work with their lab partner in pairs. So it'll be kind of a lab that they'll do with another student. Once again, I'm going to go and I'm going to paste that same standard into the box that's asking for the standard and ask it to generate a lab for me to do with a partner. And so here it is. It lays out the objectives. You could see the materials. It goes through the procedures that you're going to need to take, the equipment, as well as the things that you're going to be looking for. You could see that the standard that I included is also in there and gives me some other notes and things to consider and look at. And again, if this is the lab that I want to do, that's great. If it's not the lab exactly the way that I want it, then we can go down here and remember Raina, the chatbot, is embedded into all of these different tools. So you can say, now create this that a student could do on their own. Right? And so now it comes up with a different version of the lesson plan that a student would be able to do if they didn't have their lab partner for that day. Again, we can copy it, we can place it to our Google Doc, or this could be one of those resources that maybe I want to save for another time. So for this particular instance, I'm going to choose to save this resource, and I'm just going to call it my evolution lab, and I'm going to choose to save that. And now it got added into the resources that once again I can go back to and I can access from the resources part of my output history that you see over there on the left. Awesome. Now, what other sorts of things could we do to kind of ramp up and improve upon this science lesson that we're developing here? Well, one of the things was, in with the 5E lesson, it talked about an engaging type of an activity. Well, what if I didn't really want to do that brainstorm activity that it suggested? And instead, maybe what I want to do is to start it out with a quote and have the students kind of focus in on a quote from a famous person about our topic of evolution. So there is a tool. Remember, you can search for tools by entering that what type of tool you're looking for in the search bar, and there is a quote of the day tool. So I'm going to try the quote of the day tool here as something. And again, look, hey, it is 10th grade, and I'm going to put in, I would like a quote about evolution. And you could see here that it gives me 3 different quotes that I could use that might be appropriate for this particular lesson to start off with. As it's, any of these would be one to kind of like maybe generate some different discussion about. It also gives me some other suggested prompts that I could do or add to it if I don't like the ones that are here, or how I can pull in other resources that could then build upon what I've got started here. But I'm just kind of showing you some of the things that are out there as something that you could possibly do to help you build out other parts of that lesson. So I'm going to skip that part for now. The next thing that I wanted to show you here is the ability to develop YouTube video questions based upon a video that you find and that you are going to expect students to be able to watch. So I'm going to say, again, it kind of, because it's just kind of been my history here so far as 10th grade, it's defaulting to that. I wanted to generate 3 questions, and maybe I want them to be free response questions. And I want to base it off a video that I have found that I would like students to be able to watch. And I'm going to copy the link here to a particular video. Oop, I didn't copy that link right. Hang on here. There. Let's delete that. I'm going to copy the link to a particular video. Now I've got it. And I'm going to paste that YouTube link that's in there. And I'm going to ask it to generate questions based upon this particular video. So while it doesn't pull the video directly into MagicSchool itself, so that you're not going to be able to play it in MagicSchool and have the questions pop up. Although, if you do belong to a school that has the paid version, the Education Workspace Plus version of Google, you could create this as an interactive video and embed these questions that it suggests for you into those YouTube videos. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. You can see that it does generate these different questions for you, and that it did make them for them an answer key as well. Another cool thing here too is, because it's YouTube and Google and it all kind of blends together here, it now also gives me the ability here, especially if I'm a Google Classroom user. This is really, really cool. I can export this out into a Google form, which then I could bring into my Google Classroom and I could assign it out to kids. So kind of a neat thing. Once you allow them to have certain permissions to be able to access your drive, it's going to export that out. So another kind of neat feature here that you're able to do, you can see it's working on exporting that form as we speak. And I can even choose to open that form, and I can share that screen to you. And you can see here, it opened it up in a Google form. Now I can call it something different here if I wanted to, and say this is my evolution quiz. Right? Now go through the steps to assign it to your different classes in Google Classroom. So another cool tool that is available here within MagicSchool that you're able to add things to. The next thing here that I want to leave you off with as well is the ability to also take what you have here and generate some content that might be useful for a student on an IEP. So again, you could take those lessons that you had, you can identify a student, and what their learning disability happens to be, as well as describe certain behaviors, needs, or strengths that they need to have in order to be successful with that particular lesson. And I bring this one up here, and I could enter this stuff in, but I bring it up here because I just want to give a word of caution that make sure that you're not entering any personal identifiable information about a student anytime into AI, whether it's in MagicSchool or anywhere else. Instead, describe as many of those characteristics of that student without getting into things that would lead someone to identify exactly who that was. Okay. Then back to these tools here, and one more thing that I wanted to do. And what was it? Oh, using it to, okay, start that part over. One final tool that I'm going to show you here is the ability to generate an email that you may want to send out to parents. I don't know how it is in your schools, but oftentimes there are certain topics that, especially in a high school class, that you might have to deal with that are a little bit sensitive to some groups of parents. And so evolution may be one of those things that you might need to send. So I'm going to include in a letter to family, say next week beginning our unit in life science about evolution. I also want to include how to contact teacher if you have questions. And I also want to deal with this idea that these are expectations found in state standards. And I also want to have something, maybe how about deal with common evolution misconceptions. And let's see what it does. So I give it that time, it's generating that email for parents, and you can see that I could do the same different things here that I had done before. I could copy this and I could edit it if I don't like the exact way that says. But in other words, it kind of creates this tool that you're able to work with to help develop a message for parents. You could use it really for any time. You could talk about how you're updating your gradebook or that conferences are coming up. And it does a pretty good job with that. Okay, let's see. One other thing here that I want to do is to, okay. Now, one other thing that you might have is you might have some parents that aren't native English speakers. So one of the things that you're able to do by accessing the chatbot Reina toolbar that you see on the bottom is that you can click where it says prompts, and you can choose to translate any produced content that MagicSchool makes into another language. So if you have, for example, we have some schools that have some Russian populations that live within their areas and their kids go to school. And while the kids might be developing good English language learning skills, the parents oftentimes can kind of fall behind. So one of the things that you can do here is you can apply a change in language here, and it's going to translate that email so that when you send it home to parents, it arrives in the native language of those parents. And again, this tool, this feature, this translate part is available in all of the different things that you find within here. So if I wanted the YouTube questions translated into Russian, it would do that for me as well. So of these things here, I think when you work to pull them all together, I think it can be a really great tool in helping you develop some great lesson plans that focus on instruction, that are student-centered, and is really going to help increase the overall learning of your students. And the best part of it here, not only is that it's free, but, and I know David touched on this as well, these can really be time-saving tools. And I think that's an important part here to keep in mind. You are still that human, that teacher, the one that the kids are going to connect with. But if it can save you some time so you can better focus on those relationship buildings and those connections you make with students, I think that's one of the most powerful things that AI is bringing to education.
Yep, I think it's a huge time saver. There's a lot of good examples in there of things that teachers can do that they have a lot of assistance now that they maybe didn't have before. So.
Right. I remember my methods class, social studies, way back in 1998, I think is when I had my social studies methods class. And yeah, there was no time-saving tool there other than you were going to do it all, and you were going to be basically write down every word that you were going to have to say in a 45, 50-minute lesson. And if it wasn't there, you were going to get docked on it. But
yeah, for all the pasting and everything.
Nothing like that.
Yep. So.
Thanks again for tuning into this episode of Integrate This EdTech podcast. We hope you picked up some valuable insights for instructional and classroom use. Special thanks to David Berner and all of our viewers and listeners for joining us on this digital exploration. I'm Jeremy Mikla, and until next time, keep integrating, innovating, and shaping the future of education. Happy teaching, everyone.
And don't forget to subscribe to our Integrate This YouTube channel and join our socials for the latest tutorials and discussions and activities. Join us next week for our podcast on the best newsletter creator tools for all educators.
Fantastic. All right, now I can end.